This isn't going to be easy to say, but I have had to make a very difficult decision for my server, Rune Venture. We're going in a new direction with it. You see, originally, I was inspired by two different sources: the mod pack Vault Hunters, which we'll talk about more later, and another server called Wingcraft. The part from Wingcraft that particularly inspired me was their class system. They have this skill tree where you can unlock these abilities and different abilities for different classes. It's not particularly well made for multiplayer, parties and stuff, but I was going to change that. I had an entire system set up for 20 different subclasses, which fit into 5 different classes. If you follow my Discord, you'd see that there is Assault, which is the frontline DPS. There's Duelist, which is the single target heavy damage, like burst damage. You had the Control, which was all about manipulating the battlefield, slowing down your enemies, and debuffing them. Support, which is all about buffing and supporting and healing your allies. And finally, the Tanks, the steadfast cornerstones of any team composition. They'd all have their own different abilities. Each class would have, or each subclass would have its 8 different abilities, and you could mix and match them to have 4 at a time. And it was awesome. I loved it so much. I fell in love with the whole idea. And if you're following Discord, like I said, there was so much content that you're able to see for my development process. I was laying out these giant Google drawings for the entire skill tree. I even got started on some of the skill trees coding. But while I was doing some of the balancing for the abilities and getting into the coding of it, I realized it's not going to work. It's just not, unfortunately. And that was a really difficult decision to say, no, I'm not going to do this, because I loved it so much. But first and foremost, I had to realize my server isn't Wingcraft. It's not an RPG. If you want an RPG, there's lots of wonderful servers out there. There's Wingcraft, there's Elysia Craft. Just check out some of the servers. You will love them if you want RPGs. But my server, more than Wingcraft, is inspired by the mod pack Vault Hunters. So let's talk more about what Vault Hunters is. You see, Vault Hunters starts out as just some regular survival. You have your base, you mine, you dig, you do whatever you do in regular old Minecraft. But then you build an altar, and with this altar you'll sacrifice a couple items, random little items like lapis lazuli, some string, bamboo, spider eyes, whatever else. Just random things you can farm or dig up. And it would open a portal to a dungeon. The dungeon would have a timer. As you get in, you have a limited time before you're trapped in forever. You'd have to collect as much loot while fighting off mobs in the dungeon and get out. The loot would be special custom items for crafting or for the mods that are in the mod pack. You see, the mod pack had a research tree, same as my server does. And with the research tree, you'd unlock, stuff like storage stuff, your power systems, your factory mod, whatever else like that. Same as my server does. And so I realized, this whole class system doesn't work because of the balancing problems, of the fact that you go into a dungeon and yes, I can make the mobs have 300 health and you have to upgrade your abilities to properly keep up, yada yada. And then you get out of the dungeon, you're in regular vanilla survival, and it just kablooies everywhere. Sure, I could add even some health upgrades to make the PvP work well, but your actual vanilla survival experience is gonna suck, honestly, because you're gonna be dropping entire nukes by a couple dungeon runs to be able to keep things properly balanced and have good progression. Because I get to add 0.1 hearts of damage to my attack because of my upgrade. Whoop-de-doo. I'm not gonna do that. That's just not fun. So we're going with a new direction. This new direction is inspired by Minecraft Dungeons. Minecraft Dungeons, I love it. It doesn't have a lot of quality of life features, and it lacks many, as in my opinion, a lot of Minecraft does. Quality of life is definitely one of the weaker sides of it. But I still love Minecraft Dungeons, nonetheless. With Minecraft Dungeons, if you happen to know, there are artifacts. Artifacts are things that have cooldowns, but they have really powerful abilities that you get to use, or buffs, or stuff like that. And so I'm going to move more towards that. The abilities that were originally part of the classes are now going to be put into items. So instead of selecting the knight class and having your one knight's halberd from which you can left click, right click, shift right click, shift left click to be able to do 4 different abilities of the 8 total options that the knight subclass has. Instead, there are going to be these items, and you can get a random item from a boss key. You defeat a boss of a dungeon, you get a boss key, you go to your little, lottery, ching ching, and you get a random item. This random item will have one of those abilities. But I realized, okay, new problem. Many of the abilities are going to become entirely arbitrary and just obsolete, unused even. Say, for example, that you are an arbalist. You have your crossbow, and one of your abilities is to shoot a giant bolt, and one of your other abilities is to dash back, and just 2 abilities for now. Let's not make it too complicated. So with these 2 abilities, you'd have one item to activate them both. That's just one item in your hotbar. You have your cooldowns. You have 4 abilities in total, but that's the only 2 that we're going to focus on. You're good. You shoot your thing, you dash back, you're fine. But now, since it's not class focused anymore, now it's item focused. You have to have 2 separate items. You have one item that does your attack, another item that does your dash back. Well, I got to thinking, okay, let's say I'm going through a dungeon and I'm going to collect an item that puts up a shield, an item that shoots a giant crossbow, an item to dash back, an item to do a healing effect, an item to freeze mobs in a zone, all these different things, right? That's like half my hotbar used up, which is precious inventory space for the looting, mind you. And so I realized, who's going to have the dash back item at that point, right? I'm just going to walk backwards, right? Even though the dash back is objectively, it's a good ability. You're able to gal the area. It's not comparative to the other abilities that you have. When you're locked into only having your 4 abilities, you're going to be like, all right, I'm going to shoot my crossbow, then I'm going to dash back, then I'm going to shoot, my poison thing, then I'm going to, dash back again. You have your options, and you're going to use what you have. But when you have, instead of only 4 options to be able to use, now you have 160 items. Why in the world would you waste your hotbar space just trying to jump somewhere, right? The movement items are going to become entirely arbitrary, and so are some of the healing ones. Yes, I can use an item in my hotbar that's going to do a nice healing effect, but what is that compared to having extra loot space, a Tome of Undying, stuff like that, right? When you have to consider that one of the most limited resources that players will have at a certain level is their inventory space, you have to start thinking about things from a different perspective, right? So that's when I realized we need some sort of combination system where you can take multiple items and put them all together, right? And so I was like, all right, I need a fusion system. And so that's exactly what we are going to be doing, is that you have items which are primary items. These items are your offensive, your defensives, your big swing sword, put up a wall, whatever else like that. And then you're going to have your secondary abilities. And these secondary abilities have their own items, so you don't have to fuse them. You can use the secondary ability with its own item, but you can then fuse them together by just putting them together in a crafting table or something like that. And now you have one item that has both abilities, because while yes, the dash back certainly is not going to be comparative to having a whole extra hotbar, when you have to have some sort of support ability as one of the secondary ones, you can't have 2 attack abilities on one item. You're like, all right, well, let me look at support. Let me look at movement. What do I want? All right, well, I unlocked the dash back. Let me fuse that with my primary item I do my big sword swing from. And so you're going to end up using that, right? And so that's why I think this will actually work really well for the server, because the server gets to honestly focus more towards what it's built for, what it's inspired by, a survival experience that you then get to unlock with the research tree, multiple game mechanics as you dive through the dungeons. You get minerals and materials from the dungeons for those game mechanics that you unlock, and you have abilities, yes, but they're balanced for both the dungeons and also for your vanilla survival experience. And so I think that this new direction is going to be the best. Even though it's a very difficult decision to make, I loved that class system. I loved it very much, but I'm letting go of it. It's a tough decision. So yeah, I hope you guys end up really liking the server and the new direction, because guess what, guys? not using the class system also speeds development by a magnitude and a half. All right, I kid you not, it would have taken months of programming just to get the class systems for 5 starter classes done, to get the whole skill trees programmed and everything. Months. But just having a couple items that you get, from your little lottery run that have their abilities and confuse them together, this is going to take such a shorter time. We are going to be able to get to an open beta much sooner. And guys, I'm looking forward to it. So stay tuned. I hope you guys love it. And I hope you guys are able to enjoy the server. Like, subscribe. Catch you all later. Bye-bye.